Straight Up Book Club. So today we're going to be talking about Act 5 of A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Trigger warning before we do. There's lots of sensitive subject matter in this book. There's themes of violence, self-harm, suicide, child abuse, death as well. So just want to put that out there before we get into it. But yeah.
Shall we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Where did you, what were you carrying this week as you were reading this book, and what were you drinking with it?
I was drinking coffee and kombucha. I feel like that's been my go-to for quite some time. I was really craving like a gin martini last night, but then, as I was telling you earlier, I had like a little endo flare-up and then just laid on the couch and drank ginger ale. But yeah, that's what I was drinking, carrying, I guess. Fatigue.
Yeah.
A little bit of pain.
That's a real one.
So I guess it was a very fitting book, you know, when you're like not feeling the greatest and you want to read something a little darker. Like, I feel like it was very fitting.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, you're like really sitting in the pain.
Physically and mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, I was drinking some lager from this burger place. There's this burger place near me that has their own lager, and I'm not quite sure if they brew it. But yeah, it's pretty good. So we got some takeout and got some of their lager.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's nice.
I'm so jealous.
And then what was I carrying with me? I was feeling a little bit better this week. And I think I was just kind of grateful that I just had a reset emotionally this week, and I was feeling better. So I think I sort of balanced out this book and how that made me feel. So
we're taking turns having our moments.
I think so.
You had your moment last week. I'm having my moment this week, and I already feel better.
Good.
And I might have the gin martini tonight.
You're on the up.
I have these beautiful olives in the fridge. They're just like screaming to be put into a martini. So
ooh, do it.
I
That
haven't
sounds
had
so
one
good.
yet, but yeah, I think I will. I'll send a picture. I'll post a picture on Instagram once I make one.
Nice.
Shall we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so this is the act called the Happy Years, which we kind of discussed last time, that there's something kind of devastating about that, because when you say the happy years, it feels like there's a moment when maybe they might end, and it becomes very evident that they do end in this chapter, at least in one very dramatic way. Morty's also joining us now. Come on, baby. I'm not giving you so much airtime this time. I have to edit you out because it takes you 5 minutes to jump up on the couch.
It's like he's arriving fashionably late. He's like, I'm ready for my entrance.
It's like he hears us start talking about books and he's like, I want to come. Oh, hi,
feeling
baby.
left out.
Come on over. He's been really sooky. I think he's been a mama's boy this week. I think he can tell that I'm in a little bit of pain, and so he's been like choosing me over G lately.
Aw.
Which he doesn't usually do. Hi, my baby. Come lay down. Okay, sorry. So this act begins with Willem realizing that he has a little bit more of, wait, how do I say this? He's realizing that he has stronger feelings for Jude than he realizes. It's not just friendship. There's like more of like a love there for him on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And they enter into a relationship. He kind of approaches Jude after he's been like sitting on these feelings for a little while, and he goes to Jude and asks if he would want to enter a relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know from you, did you see that coming? Like, did you kind of wonder if it would turn into that?
I did not see that coming. I was pretty surprised by it, because the last couple of episodes, or the last episode, we've talked about how he has these sort of like paternal feelings towards him. He wants to take care of him. He is maybe thinking of his brother Hemming in their relation, like about their relationship. He has feelings that remind him of Hemming in a way. So all of that was that did not lead me to believe that they would end up together. So yeah, I was a little surprised there. How about you?
If they both had these feelings for each other, why not enter a relationship? But I didn't actually think it was gonna blossom into that. I think that was more of like they should get some fan fiction going for this book where the two of them enter a relationship, but they didn't need to.
Yeah, I thought it was like a beautiful bromance, but now looking back, even when they're saying, I think Willem has this moment where he's like, I can't wait to be home to Jude, and he thinks of Jude as being his home. So I guess like we had clues towards this
Totally.
throughout. It's also interesting. So we find out that JB has been in love with Willem as well. And that was interesting. So all of that sort of jealousy starts to make sense. What did you think of that revelation?
I think that JB, I have such a soft spot for JB, and I think we've talked about him like quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if he always knows how to handle his emotions, but I think he tries.
Yeah.
And I wasn't surprised that he was in love with Willem. There were clues about that as well, like the part when he talks about that he thought that him and Willem were a unit. Are you leaving us already?
He's just getting, oh, I thought you were getting comfy.
He's gonna go look for food, and I think he's eaten it already. Sorry. Yeah, JB, it didn't surprise me that he had feelings for Willem, but I think the way that he handled it was actually kind of sweet. Like, at first, he has, like, a little bit of a meltdown because he's the last one to be told. Like, Jude and Willem, I almost said break the news, share the news with, like, Harold and Julia, and then, like, Malcolm, the person who's, like, totally absent from this book. I don't even really understand his role. And then, like, Richard and Andy, and then finally they tell JB, and JB's kind of like, why am I the last one to know?
Yeah.
And they're at a restaurant because they're hoping that, like, he won't throw a tantrum at a restaurant, and you can tell that he's, like, getting really uncomfortable, and he's trying to, like, be composed, but he's having a bit of a moment, and then him and Willem go outside, I think for like a smoke, and they're sitting on the pavement or on the sidewalk, and JB says something to Willem. He says something like, I just want to know, like, why didn't you love me as much as you love Jude? Didn't that break your heart? And Willem's response is, you didn't need me like Jude needed me.
That broke my heart because it's like, how are you in a relationship with someone where you think it's so one-sided and you're their savior? He says rescue mission in reference to their relationship. And I'm just like, oh, this sucks. No one wants to think that their partner sees them as someone to be saved in that way. And it's not even true, right? He has to have moments where he has to remind himself and say, okay, Jude is helping me out in all of these ways. But it's not his default. He has to work to remember that.
He does. Okay, this is a theory that I have, and I want to know what you think. I think that Willem and JB probably would have been more likely to be together as a couple if Willem didn't have that history with his brother Hemming and feeling like he failed him and feeling like he needed to save someone. And I keep going back to that moment where Willem was like dating this woman for quite some time, and Jude had just kind of mentioned in his interiority that she reminded him of JB. And you can tell that there's something there, but and then the fact that that's how he responded when JB's like, why didn't you ever love me like you loved him? And he's like, he needed me more. He was on a mission to be with someone who needed him. And I think some people like are really driven by a feeling of being needed, and I think that's how some relationships like work, and that seems to be Willem's motive. But what do you think?
I had not picked up on that. And Jude saying that about, I forgot her name. Was it Paulina or Robin? Yes, that's really interesting. I think you're so right, JB and Willem. But that makes me think Willem didn't lean into his attraction there when JB needed him either. But maybe JB needed something different that didn't remind him of Hemming. So I think your theory works. Like it's sort of the draw was something in his past that was unresolved.
Do you think it's also that difference of JB kind of needed him in more of an emotional way, whereas Jude needed him in a more physical way? I wonder if that almost helped like weigh the difference for Willem. This is my own theory.
I love it.
I don't know. I just wanted to talk about it. Again, I've got the soft spot for JB. He also creates that art like exhibit, and it's
Mm-hmm.
totally dedicated to Willem and Jude, and he calls
Yeah.
it Frog and Toad. Did you pick up on the Frog and Toad reference right away? That story about the two friends.
I didn't. What is it?
Oh, it's like a child's story. It's a series of children's storybooks, and it's like two best friends. One's a frog, one's a toad, and they just like do everything together. And there's like these really sweet moments between the two of them. We'll find some examples of them and put them on our social channels so you can see what they look like for those of you who don't know. I always love them. I think they're so sweet. It's just two best friends, and they just really love each other.
I love that. So okay, so I was wondering because Jude is trying to figure out who Toad is, right? So what was the significance of Toad in that series?
I don't think there was one.
Okay.
I think it was literally, not that I recall, I think it was just one's a frog, one's a toad, and there's no more to it than that. And I think that's genuinely how JB saw it. I think JB saw this relationship that was really sweet and compared it to the two of them. And it was no more than that. And I think Willem and Jude not knowing what the story was, they immediately thought, oh, Toad is like the ugly version of a frog, that's not true.
Is a frog better looking than a toad?
Like, maybe. Don't toads have warts or something? I don't know, but...
Okay.
We'll do
We've never analyzed this before.
I don't know. Let's look at the frogs and toads and decide for ourselves.
But that part was so interesting too, because we start to find out about how Jude's not going to Willem's events, like these big like publicity events, because he doesn't want Willem to be seen with him, because he feels really self-conscious and he doesn't want to drag Willem down. I think like he says something to that effect. So the timing of the show was interesting too, because he's sort of in these feelings, and then JB is sort of externalizing them once again. You know, that's the role JB plays. He's like, okay, what are your wounds? I'm gonna pick at them.
So true. Also with JB, he was the only one that experienced envy towards Jude. So even though he's like the biggest like kind of nitpicker, picking of nits, even though he is more vocal about the differences between like Jude and his friends, he's also the one who's the most envious of Jude. Like I think that JB wishes he was Jude.
Yeah.
Because he has that relationship with Willem. And there is a moment when Jude kind of in his interiority says that, you know, JB was the only one who looked at me with real envy. And there's that moment when JB is finally warmed up to the relationship, and he kind of gives him a hug and a kiss, and he's like, you know, Jude, you've won the lottery or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who expresses those kinds of sentiments to Jude.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where people see the outwardly, you know, successes and your life going well, and they're like, oh, like, you have everything, and then you're like really struggling internally. So that's a classic, right?
So classic. The other thing that happens in the happy years is, and you were so right last time, I thought that Jude had told Willem everything. Remember when he's like, I'm going to tell you a story, and then we go back into like Jude's history? That wasn't him telling Willem the story. We as the reader were learning his story.
The structure led us on.
It really did.
Yeah.
And then we get that moment where they go to Harold's and Julia's for Thanksgiving. Jude has been cutting himself again. I don't remember why. I think he just might be like, he's almost like feeling too happy, and that's making him nervous. And Willem gets like actually quite physical with him when they're at Harold's and Julia's, and they end up leaving before their like annual Thanksgiving dinner. That seems to be a big deal for them. And they go back to their house, and they get into the closet, and that seems to be the place where Jude is able to like open up to Willem, because I guess he's like not really facing him. He's lying down. It seems like Willem's behind him. And Jude tells him everything, and I think it says it takes like a few days, maybe like 2 days, and Willem like gets up a couple times to use the bathroom, put some water on his face. That's also when we learn, you know, his history or Willem learns his history with Brother Luke, but I think that's also when we learn about Dr. Trailer and his time with him. Tell me what you think about all of that.
I can't, Heather. It's just like, it's too much. This is like, reading this, I was like, how much bad shit can happen?
Yes.
And then I started...
Like, how can it keep getting worse?
Okay, I wrote down everything bad that has happened to Jude because I'm like, this is like really testing my what's the word? Suspension of disbelief. So, all right. So the bad things that happened to Jude in this book so far are the brothers, the counselors, the adoption that was a false start, Dr. Trailer running him over, the amputation, Caleb, lifelong STDs, PTSD, self-harm, letters from his abusers,
Yeah.
Willem dying, which we'll talk about, and then falling out with Harold. I don't want to believe that one person can experience all of that. This is like horrible, a series of horrible events. So when I found out about Dr. Trailer, I was like, oh shit, like can someone cut Jude a break?
That's the saddest thing, I think. And unfortunately, I do think that people who are vulnerable end up being taken advantage of. I do think that Jude was very vulnerable from the start, and predators take advantage of vulnerable people.
Okay.
So I think he had like I think people saw that vulnerability, and predators see that. They see he doesn't have any protection. They see he doesn't have any sort of support system. So he is the person that people are going to prey on. And I think that's what Dr. Trailer saw. That's what Caleb saw. That's what Brother Luke saw. And the counselor, someone who didn't have any protection. So it as horrible as it is, and like, I want to say unbelievable, it also wasn't that unbelievable.
Yeah. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about it like that. It's, yeah, when you're vulnerable, people see it.
Yes.
Because they're looking for it.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
I really hope that this is not.
I hope this is like such a rare.
Yeah.
But realistically, you're right. It's probably not. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But that's kind of where my mind went. Is like, oh, poor Jude is like, he just doesn't have anyone to protect him. And then he does have the protection.
Yeah.
Later on with like Willem and Harold. And you're right. Like, we now see that Willem probably dies, and we still don't know what this falling out with Harold is. And I'm like, how in the world could anyone have a falling out with him at this point?
You said probably dies. Does he not? Do you think he might not die?
No, I think he's dead. I don't know why I said probably. I think I'm recovering from the fury where they're like, they're dead. Just kidding. They're alive. I'm dead. No, I'm not. No, I think in this book he actually died. Because it shows him running towards Hemming. Mm-hmm. That was a beautiful moment. He sees Jude first, but then he ends on Hemming.
Yeah.
I guess Hemming's kind of welcoming him into the afterlife a little bit.
Yeah, what did you think about that? That his like last thoughts aren't Jude, it's Hemming. So does that solidify that connection for you?
It does. It definitely solidified the connection of like him wanting to be with someone who needed him. But to me, it was also like, I saw it as his last thoughts were of Jude, and then Hemming was that transition into actually dying.
I think it did solidify that connection for me. It made me think of, well, when he sees Jude, he does see some form of Hemming, and then the Hemming part is more, ever present for him. Yeah. Yeah, Malcolm and Sophie are also in that car, so I think they are also dead now.
What do you think of Malcolm's role in this book, where he is really such an offside character, but it's introduced as like four friends, and he's the one that we don't really get anything from? There's like one paragraph where it talks about, I can't remember whose interiority it is, maybe JB's actually, where it says that, I think JB says like, what has Malcolm ever had to like be worried about? And I think it's Jude's interiority, where it's like, the anxieties of just being a human who's living. And there's a short paragraph that talks about, even people with a lot of privilege, like, still have things to be anxious about. It's not the same kinds of anxieties, but they're still there nonetheless. And it's a very short paragraph. And that, to me, felt like the most we had of Malcolm in this book. Besides the little, like, the building of the models and...
The part with the wedding, where he's, like, trying to figure out, like, all of that interiority.
That
Yeah, he does.
Very sparse.
He does seem like off to the side, but also really present in a really strange way. Like we know about his renovating Willem and Jude's places, and we talked about in the past, he's really thinking of their futures as well, and looking out for them in a way that they aren't looking out for themselves. So that part is really interesting. But he does seem to be a side character there to further the main characters, right?
And now he's dying too.
Now he's dying too. And again, like furthering the storyline. So, and I think that didn't really bother me. Does it bother you that he's sort of supporting in that way?
No, I think it had me more curious than anything.
Yeah. And their partners too. Sophie, even Willem's partners, Paulina and Robin. I keep forgetting Robin's name. Same thing there. They're maybe even one step removed as supporting characters. So there's a lot of people in this book. It's a long book, so
it's very long. I get a lot of different lives, but I love that.
Okay, so one of the other things I wanted to talk about was about the names of some of these acts, right? So this one is called The Happy Years. The happy years are pretty short-lived. Most of this act is set in what they reference as the awful years, the amputation, building up to that, and then recovering from that. It's a big chunk of it, and it's like the emotions there, and then we're also learning about Dr. Trailer, so a lot of bad stuff. But I was set to have a little bit more sort of levity, not levity, but I guess like reprieve from everything horrible in this part. And then there's a very brief period of happiness, but that part also has undertones of, Jude not being comfortable having sex with Willem, and that is sort of ever present in their relationship too. So, and then we bookend it with Willem dying and Malcolm and Sophie maybe as well, and what's hanging over the rest of this act for me is also how does that play into Harold and Jude's relationship ending too. So what did you think about that? And I noticed like in one of the earlier acts too, I think it was the Vanities, that was meant to reference Willem's role as an actor. That was a very short part of it too. So what are your thoughts on, these almost like nuggets that the author's pulling out and creating focus on, building up anticipation, but then not really giving it to us?
It's an excellent tool to keep us going. Like, I can't remember the last time I read a book that's so long, but was, and like also literary, but also a page turner. Like I find a lot of times I'll bring this book to bed with me at night, and I take a melatonin, I get into bed. Typically I read maybe like 5-10 pages of a book and I go to sleep. I can't stop reading this. Like I have to be like, girl, you need to go to bed. Like you need to like put this book down. You need to turn off your light. And so I do think a part of that is like, okay, well, where are the happy years? Where is that? Now, some of them are a little bit quieter. Like the first one was like Lisbonard. Did I say that right? Lisbonard Street?
I think so.
The book I realized because I was looking at the next two acts, which are Dear Comrade and then Lisbonard Street again. So it's bookended with the same title.
Oh, okay.
I do think they're very selective. Yeah, I don't know what to think about it. Is that what she wants us to take away from these chapters? Because there is a really brief moment where Willem and Jude talk about the happy years together, and what they're referencing. Oh, sorry, that's Morty's lunch. That's what he's been waiting for. There is a moment when they're talking about the happy years, and it's the title of a movie or play that Willem's about to be in. And they were joking about how ironic that name is, and it's kind of like what we were saying last time, which is that when you say the happy years, it makes it seem like it's a small pocket of time out in a mass of darkness. But yeah, she really made us get through like 90% of that act before we get to a moment when there is some happiness. Mind you, I do think that act was a bit of a roller coaster because they embark on a relationship, that's happy, and then we realize that Jude doesn't want to have sex, and they stop having sex as a couple, and you kind of go down from there. You find out that Willem's finding is like having sex with women on the side, which Jude has kind of told him he can do, but like Willem is keeping from him, so it still feels like a little icky. Like if you've come to this agreement, then like I don't know, I feel like he should probably tell him, but I don't know.
I think he does in a way. Well, I think you're right. I think that Jude said something about, like you said, that he's open to it, but yeah, Willem never acknowledges it. He says he would never do it. So, yeah. A little icky for sure,
icky.
Especially when someone writes about it in a magazine or something, and JB asks him about it, and he's like, yeah, we've always had an open relationship.
Wild. But yeah, I think it's a way to, maybe it's like what she wants us to take out of it. I'm not really sure. But
yeah,
I like it. I like the title. It had me excited to read this. I think you and I both were kind of commenting on like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So it was definitely purposeful and compelling.
It also makes me think that the last 100 pages we're going to get into next are going to be dark. It's going to be hard to get through. And I think we're going to find out what happens with Harold.
Yes.
What are your predictions for that?
I have none. I think I'm like, I think this whole book I've been like, what could possibly happen where Harold gives up on Jude? And I think I've said this before. I feel like it has to be something where like Jude is really the one who ends it and Harold has no choice. What about you?
Yeah, I think that Jude might just sort of go really insular and just remove himself from everyone that loves him and just kind of go to a dark place maybe. And that might be related. So, yeah.
I'm scared, but
I am scared.
we have 2 acts left.
It's only 100 pages and 2 acts, which is
not
interesting. Yeah.
I mean, when we're done this book, I'll be good to be done. Like, that sounds wrong. I think when we're done this book, we need to read something lighter. Yeah. We're gonna do a palate cleanser after this one. Like, it's been really good. Probably one of the best books I've read in a very long time. But it's good to change things up.
Yeah. So next week we're gonna read the last 2 acts, and yeah, we'll see where all of this takes us.
Yeah, we'll find out. I'm scared, but I'm ready. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Catch you next time.
See you at book club.
Bye.
Bye.